This is not a clinical book. There are no adjusting protocols here, no treatment algorithms, no advice on how to treat patients. That is your domain, and you are already good at it. This is a business book written for chiropractic clinic owners who are excellent at the clinical side and frustrated by everything else. The marketing that does not work, the leads that go cold, the patients who disappear after 2 visits, the slow months that make no sense, the referrals that used to come and now do not. The analogies in this book, the casino, the drug dealer, are not endorsements, they are lenses. They exist because sometimes the clearest way to see a broken system is to compare it to one that works, even when that system is doing something wrong. The mechanics are real, the mission is yours. The patient stories in this book are composites. Karen, Mike, Dr. Mark, Anna are not single real people. They are built from patterns, things that show up in clinic after clinic, lead after lead, audit after audit. If you recognize yourself in one of them, that is the point. Nothing in this book is a guarantee of results. What it is, a framework for thinking about your clinic like an operator instead of a gambler. What you do with that framework is on you. Now let's begin. A note before we begin. Drug dealers have better distribution than most chiropractic clinics. That should bother you. Not because drug dealers are good, they are not. Not because what they sell is good, it is not. But because people selling destruction have figured out something that clinics helping people heal still have not. How to make sure the right people know you exist, keep coming back, and bring others with them. You have the better product. You have the better mission. You have the better reason to be known. And yet, I'm not a chiropractor. I've never looked at an x-ray and pretended to know what I'm seeing. I couldn't tell you what a spinal subluxation is if it hit me in the face. But I do understand one thing very well: business. Specifically, the game of putting money into a machine and getting more money back out. That is the game I play. And if you own a chiropractic clinic, that is the game you are playing too, whether you realize it or not. The problem is that most chiropractors are playing the wrong game. Some are playing the referral trap, some are playing insurance slots, and some are playing random marketing roulette. And that is what I call gambling. This book is about a different game, a game where you stop being the gambler and start becoming the house. Because in a casino, the house does not win every hand. It wins because the system is built so the odds are stacked in its favor over enough repetitions. That is what your clinic needs: a system that stacks the odds in your favor. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Hope is not a strategy. Most clinic owners do not have a growth strategy. They have a hope strategy. They hope referrals keep coming. They hope insurance pays enough. They hope the next slow month fixes itself. They hope the Facebook ad works. They hope the front desk follows up. They hope patients show up. They hope people say yes. Hope is not a strategy. The easiest way to see whether you are running on hope is to look at your last 30 patients. Not your feelings, not your intentions, not what your website says. Your last 30 patients. That number tells the truth. Quick exercise. Are you gambling? I actually want you to go to your desk. Pull up your last 30 patients. Split them into two groups. Active growth, patients who came from a repeatable system you control. Luck, patients who came from sources you do not control. Examples of active growth: paid campaigns, events, email campaigns, reactivation campaigns, direct outreach, content with a clear call to action, any repeatable acquisition process. Examples of luck: random referrals, insurance directory searches, walk-ins, unpredictable word of mouth, I found you somehow, anything you cannot repeat on command. Now count. If more than 70% of your last 30 patients came from luck, you are not running a patient acquisition system. You are playing the referral trap. Good clinics love referrals, but smart clinics do not depend on them. Imagine standing outside with a bucket, waiting for rain. When the rain comes, they think the business is working. When the rain stops, they panic. That is not control. That is weather, and you cannot control the weather. You are not losing because you are a bad doctor. You are losing because you are playing a business game you were never taught how to win. In the next chapter, I'll show you why referrals are the most dangerous kind of growth, because they feel like proof. Chapter 2. The referral trap. Referrals are the most dangerous kind of growth because they feel like proof. When referrals come in, everything feels good. Your schedule fills, your team feels busy, revenue comes in, you tell yourself the practice is growing. But here is the problem: you did not create the patient. Someone else did. A patient talked about you, another provider mentioned you, a friend recommended you, an insurance directory listed you. That is not bad, but it is not control. Good clinics love referrals. Smart clinics build systems that create them, and that is what we are going to do. Before I show you the trap, I want you to meet Karen. Meet Karen. Karen is not one real patient. Karen is the patient every clinic already has. She came in with pain, 4 months of waking up at 3 a.m. and repositioning herself so her hip would stop aching, 4 months of putting a pillow between her knees every night, 4 months of not mentioning it to anyone because she was tired of hearing, "Have you tried yoga?" She was skeptical when she came in. She had tried a few things before. She was not sure your clinic would actually help. But then something changed. She was welcomed by name. She was listened to. She understood what was happening. She started feeling progress. She trusted the team. She felt cared for. And now Karen is sitting in your waiting room with a story. That story is valuable. Because Karen probably knows other people who feel the way she used to feel: her husband, her coworker, her sister, her friend from church, her neighbor who complains about his lower back every time they talk. But here is what most clinics do with Karen: nothing. They hope she tells someone. They hope she remembers to leave a review. They hope she posts about it. They hope she sends her friend. That is not a referral system. That is hope wearing a process. Now I want you to meet Sarah. Meet Sarah. Sarah is not the patient. Sarah is the person at the front desk, the receptionist, the patient coordinator, the first smile people see when they walk in, the last voice they hear before they leave. And in most clinics, Sarah is treated like she just answers phones, schedules appointments, and takes payments. That is a mistake. Sarah is sitting on one of the most valuable growth levers in the entire clinic, because Sarah sees the exact moment when patients are happiest. She sees when Karen walks in skeptical and walks out smiling. She hears when Karen says, "I feel so much better. I wish I came here sooner. My husband needs this. My coworker complains about the same thing." Most clinics let those moments disappear. Sarah smiles. Karen leaves. And the clinic hopes she tells someone. That is not a system. That is the same hope strategy wearing a different coat. So here is my free gift to you. I call it the Sarah Tactic. The Sarah Tactic has 4 parts: curiosity, easy review, easy share, and a small thank you gift. That is it. Simple beats clever. Part 1: Curiosity. Put a small handwritten sign in the waiting room, not a polished poster, not a corporate flyer, a simple handwritten sign that says, "Want a surprise? Ask Sarah." That is it. Now patients ask. And when they ask, Sarah has a reason to start the conversation. Part 2: Easy review. When Karen asks Sarah about the surprise, Sarah says, "We're doing something simple this week. If you've had a good experience here, would you be willing to share your honest experience?" It helps the next person who is sitting at home wondering who they can trust. Notice what Sarah does not say. She does not say, "Can you leave us a 5-star review?" She does not say, "Help us rank on Google." She does not say, "Please promote our clinic." That is selfish. Instead, Sarah frames the review around helping the next person. Because that is what a good review actually does. It helps someone scared, skeptical, or stuck decide who to trust. Part 3: Easy share. Then Sarah makes it frictionless. She points to a QR code. She sends the link by text. She gives Karen a simple share card. She makes the next step obvious. Because if you make people work to help you, most of them will not help. Not because they are bad people, but because they are busy. So Sarah makes it easy. After Karen shares her honest experience, Sarah thanks her. No begging, no awkwardness, no pressure, just a simple clinic ritual that turns good patient experiences into proof. And proof creates trust. And trust creates more patients. Part 4: The free shirt. Now here is where most clinic owners think too small. After Karen shares her honest experience, Sarah gives her a clinic shirt. Not some ugly throwaway shirt. A shirt people would actually wear. Something simple, something clean, something that makes Karen feel like she is part of something. You are not just giving her fabric. You are giving her an identity. Karen is not just a patient. She is now part of the clinic's community. She wears the shirt to the gym, to the grocery store, around her family. Someone asks, "What's that shirt?" And now Karen has a reason to tell the story. That is the point. The shirt is not the strategy. The shirt is the trigger. It gives the patient a reason to talk. The economics. Let's do the math. If you buy shirts in bulk, a simple branded shirt might cost you $3 to $7 landed. Call it $5. For about $5, Sarah created a review moment, a patient story, a reason for Karen to talk, a small feeling of belonging, a walking billboard, a possible referral trigger. Most clinic owners will spend hundreds or thousands of dollars trying to get cold strangers to trust them, but they ignore the people who already do. That is insane. You are not buying a review. You are investing a few dollars into making a happy patient's story easier to share. Big difference. And if one review helps one scared person choose your clinic, what is that worth? If one shirt starts one conversation, what is that worth? If one conversation becomes one patient, what is that worth? If that patient becomes a care plan patient, what is that worth? That is how operators think. They do not look at the shirt and say, "That cost me $5. They look at the shirt and say, "Can Sarah use this $5 to create attention, trust, and patient flow?" Because if the answer is yes, the shirt is not an expense. It is a tiny acquisition asset. Important rule. Do this the right way. The review must be honest. Do not ask for fake reviews. Do not ask only for positive reviews. Do not tell patients what to write. Do not use patient names, photos, stories, or screenshots in your marketing unless you have the proper written permission. The point of the Sarah tactic is not manipulation. The point is to make it easy for happy patients to share the truth. That is how smart clinics build proof. They do not wait for Karen to remember them. They create the moment. They make it easy. They thank her. They turn the patient experience into proof. And then they build systems that create more Karens. The Sarah tactic will not save a clinic by itself, but it teaches the bigger lesson. Growth improves when you stop waiting and start engineering the moments that create patients. Because a clinic that only waits for referrals has no real lever to pull. You cannot wake up Monday morning and say, "This week, I'm going to generate 25 referrals on command." You can hope. You can ask nicely. You can post something. But waiting is not a strategy. That is the referral trap. The trap is not that referrals are bad. The trap is that referrals feel good enough to hide the fact that your clinic does not have a real patient acquisition system. When referrals are flowing, everything looks fine. When they stop, the truth shows up fast. The schedule goes light. The team starts standing around. You check the bank account more than you should. You did not own the source of new patients. You were borrowing it. Now let's show the trap. The Sarah tactic is simple, but I do not want you to miss the bigger lesson. The goal is not just to get more reviews, and it is not just to get more referrals. The goal is to stop waiting, because that is the real disease inside the referral trap. Waiting. Waiting for someone to mention you. Waiting for a patient to remember you. Waiting for the insurance directory to send someone. Waiting for word of mouth to do its thing. And if waiting is the main way your clinic grows, you do not own a growth system. You own a weather report. Why the referral trap is so dangerous. Referrals are unpredictable. You cannot wake up Monday morning and decide, by Friday, I'm going to generate 20 referrals. You can hope, you can ask, you can post, you can remind patients. But unless you have a system, you cannot reliably pull that lever. And if you cannot pull the lever on command, it is not a growth channel. It is luck wearing a nice outfit. Referrals hide weak marketing. This is the part that makes referrals dangerous. Patients still come in, not enough, not predictably, not on command, but enough to make you think the business is working. So the clinic owner says, "We're fine, we get referrals." But the real marketing engine is dead. No clear offer. No consistent campaign, no follow-up system, no patient flow scorecard, no predictable way to create demand. The clinic is not growing because the system works. The clinic is surviving because the market occasionally remembers it exists. That is not the same thing. Referrals create false confidence. A good month feels like skill. A bad month gets blamed on the economy, or the season, or school starting, or holidays, or people being busy, or insurance, or the weather. And sometimes those things do matter. But if your explanation changes every month, you probably do not understand the machine. Operators do not just ask, "Was this month good?" They ask, "What created this month?" Big difference. Referrals are not enough for cash pay growth. If your goal is to build a more controlled, higher margin clinic, you cannot rely only on people wandering in through referrals or insurance. Cash pay growth requires belief before the sale. People need to understand why they should care now, why the problem matters, why your approach makes sense, why the next step is worth paying for, and why waiting costs them more. Referrals can help with trust, but they do not always create demand at scale. For that, you need a way to educate people before they ever sit across from you. That is where most clinics are missing the machine. Referral dependence makes the clinic reactive. When you depend on referrals, you only respond to demand, you do not create it. Someone calls, you respond. Someone books, you respond. Someone asks about insurance, you respond. Someone cancels, you respond. That is reaction, not control. The owner feels busy, but the business is not being driven, it is being dragged. And if you are always reacting, you are not the house, you are still the gambler. Now let's talk business. I do not want you to agree with this chapter. I want you to measure it, because feelings lie, numbers do not. The referral dependence score. Pull your last 30 patients, not your best 30, not your favorite 30, your actual last 30. Then ask, what percentage came from referrals? If 21 out of 30 came from referrals, that is 70%. That means 70% of your new patient flow came from a source you do not fully control. Referrals are good, but when 70% of your growth depends on them, you are not in control. You are exposed. Could you intentionally double that number next month? If you got 10 referrals this month, could you create 20 next month on purpose? Not hope for 20, not maybe if patients are happy, not we'll try to ask more. Could you create 20 through a repeatable process? If the answer is no, you do not have a referral system. You have referral luck. Do you know exactly why they referred? Did they refer because of the doctor, the front desk, the speed of relief, the way they were treated, the price, the location, the relationship, the review they saw, the story they heard? Most clinics do not know. And if you do not know why referrals happen, you cannot make more of them happen. Do you have a system that creates referrals? A system means the process exists even when you are busy. It has a trigger. It has a script. It has a person responsible. It has a time it happens. It has a way to track it. For example, when a patient hits a progress milestone, Sarah starts the review/referral moment. That is a system. Hopefully they tell someone is not. Do you have a system that creates patients without referrals? This is the biggest question. Because even if you engineer referrals better, referrals should not be your only growth lever. You need a way to create demand from cold or warm strangers, people who have not been referred yet, people who do not know you yet, people who are in pain, frustrated, skeptical, and unsure who to trust. If your clinic cannot create patients without waiting for referrals, then referrals are not a bonus, they are life support. Score yourself. Give yourself 1 point for every yes. I know what percentage of my last 30 patients came from referrals. I can intentionally increase referrals next month. I know why patients refer. I have a referral creation system. I have a patient acquisition system outside referrals. 0 to 1 points. You are deep in the referral trap. 2 to 3 points. You have some pieces, but the system is not complete. 4 to 5 points. You are starting to control the game. Most clinics score lower than they think, and that is fine. The goal is not to feel bad. The goal is to see the game clearly, because once you see the game, you can start changing the odds. The rule. Here's the rule I want you to remember. If you cannot predict it, repeat it, or increase it on command. It is not a growth system. It is weather. Smart clinic owners do not build their future on weather. They build systems. In the next chapter, we need to talk about another game clinic owners play without realizing it. I call it insurance slots. Chapter 3. Insurance slots. Insurance is not the enemy. Insurance can help people access care. Insurance can help clinics collect. Insurance can make sense as part of the business. But here's the problem. Insurance should help you collect. It should not be the reason your clinic grows. Because the moment your clinic depends on insurance to create predictable income, you are no longer fully playing your own game. You are playing someone else's. I call that game insurance slots. You know how it works. A patient comes in, you do the work, you submit the claim, then you wait for the approval, for the reimbursement, for the adjustment, for the denial, for the explanation, for the money. And the whole time, you hope the payout is enough to make the math work. That is the slot machine. You pulled the lever. Now you wait to see what comes back. Sometimes you win. Sometimes you get denied. Sometimes you get paid less than expected. Sometimes the money comes late after you already paid rent, payroll, software, taxes, and supplies. And most of the time, you get just enough to stay in the game for another round. That is not control. That is dependency. The clinic that looks good on paper. A clinic can look successful from the outside and still be trapped. The schedule is full. The doctor is busy. The team is moving. Patients are coming in. The gross number looks fine. But then you look closer. Accounts receivable is stacking up. The owner is checking payments like a stock trader checks charts. The team spends hours chasing claims. The doctor is doing care, admin, insurance, management, and marketing. The clinic is busy, but the owner does not feel free. That is the trap. Busy does not mean profitable. Billing does not mean collecting. Collections do not mean control. And revenue does not mean growth. Who actually controls your business? Most clinic owners think insurance is a revenue source. But for many clinics, insurance becomes a control source. It influences what gets paid, when it gets paid, how much gets paid, what gets questioned, what gets denied, how much admin the team carries, how much margin the clinic keeps. Again, insurance is not automatically bad, but if insurance controls the economics of your clinic, then you do not fully control the business. You own the rent, you own the payroll, you own the staff problems, you own the patient experience, you own the risk, but someone else controls too much of the money. That is a bad trade. Collection versus growth. Here's the rule. Insurance may help you collect. It should not be your growth strategy. Growth means you can create demand. Growth means you can attract patients before they are referred. Growth means people understand the value before they ask, "Do you take my insurance?" Growth means the clinic has a way to turn attention into trust, trust into visits, visits into paid care, and paid care into long-term value. Insurance does not do that for you. Insurance might help pay for care, but it does not build demand, create trust, educate the market, or make your clinic the obvious choice. That part is your job. And if you do not build that system, your clinic will always be reacting to claims, denials, reimbursement, slow months, whatever the payer decides. That is not ownership, that is a permission-based business. There are two games a clinic can play. Game 1, reimbursement dependence. You do the work today, submit the claim, wait for money later, and hope the payout is enough and the timing works and the rules do not change. This is insurance slots. Game 2, cash flow control. You create demand, you educate the patient, you make the value clear, you give them a simple next step. They pay directly. You know the economics up front. This is cash flow control. That does not mean you must drop insurance. It means you need a growth path that does not depend on insurance. Big difference. The cash pay gap. Most chiropractors say they want more cash pay patients, but they do not have a cash pay acquisition system. So what do? They run a discount exam, they boost a post, they try a Facebook ad, they offer a special, they hope people book, then they complain that the leads are cheap. But the problem is not always the lead. The problem is the path. A cold stranger is usually not ready to jump straight into care. They need education, trust, and a clear understanding of the problem. Why now and why you? They need a low-risk first step. That is why the next game matters. Because if you want cash pay growth, you cannot just advertise care. You have to create belief before you ask for the sale. The slot audit. Now let's measure it. Look at your last 30 days of revenue and ask what percentage of your collected revenue came from insurance. Not billed, collected. There is a difference. How much money is sitting in accounts receivable over 60 days? That is money you earned but do not control yet. How many hours did your team spend chasing claims, denials, authorizations, or billing issues? That time has a cost. Even if you do not track it, you pay for it. How many new patients came in already asking about insurance before they understood your value? That means the conversation started with coverage, not trust. If insurance reimbursement dropped next month, would your clinic still have a predictable way to create cash pay demand? This is the big one. Because if the answer is no, insurance is not just part of your business, it is holding your business hostage. Score yourself. Give yourself 1 point for every yes, I know my insurance versus cash pay revenue split. I know my AR over 60 days. I know how much team time goes into insurance admin. I have a way to attract patients before insurance becomes the main conversation. I have a repeatable cash pay growth path, 0 to 1 points. You are deep in insurance slots, 2 to 3 points. You have some control, but insurance still drives too much of the game, 4 to 5 points. You are building real cash flow control. The goal is not to hate insurance. The goal is to stop depending on it. The rule. Here's the rule. If someone else controls when you get paid, how much you get paid, and whether the work gets approved, you need another growth lever. That lever is not random ads. It is not discount exams. It is not hoping more people call. It is a patient acquisition system that creates trust before the price conversation starts. That is how you stop playing insurance slots. And that leads us to the next trap, marketing roulette. Chapter 4, Marketing Roulette. You have been here before. You see a guru talking about a new ad hack. You get a cold call from a marketing agency promising 50 new patients in 30 days. You get a notification on your phone. This post is performing better than 95% of your others. Boost it for $50. You hear another doctor say, TikTok is working. Someone tells you Google Ads is better. Someone else says, Facebook leads are dead. A consultant says, you need SEO. Your cousin says, you need to post more. And eventually, you think, maybe this is the one. So you pull the lever. You boost the post, you run the $21 new patient special, you hire the agency, you change the landing page, you try a giveaway, you post a reel, you discount the exam, you wait, and the wheel spins. That is not strategy. That is marketing roulette. The trap. Marketing roulette is what happens when a clinic jumps from tactic to tactic without a patient flow system behind it. It feels productive, and that is why it is dangerous. You are doing marketing, you are trying things, you are getting your name out there, but none of it connects. The ad does not connect to a strong offer. The offer does not connect to fast follow-up. The follow-up does not connect to a show-up process. The consult does not connect to a clear next step. The first visit does not connect to a long-term care plan. So every tactic has to save the whole business by itself. And when it does not work, the clinic blames the tactic. Facebook ads do not work. People only want discounts. The leads were bad. The agency sucked. Maybe. Sometimes the agency does suck. Sometimes the leads are bad. Sometimes the offer is weak, but a lot of the time the real problem is simpler. If your system is broken, more leads just make the mess louder. If your front desk is slow, more leads create more missed opportunities. If your reminders are weak, more bookings create more no-shows. If your consult is unclear, more consults create more, I need to think about it. If your offer is weak, more attention creates more price shoppers. If your delivery has no ascension path, more new patients create more one-time buyers. More traffic poured into a broken system does not create control. It creates noise. The gambler versus the house. The gambler chases the next tactic. The house builds the system. The gambler asks, what ad should I run? The house asks, what happens after someone clicks? The gambler asks, where can I get cheaper leads? The house asks, how many leads become booked appointments, show up, pay, stay, and refer? The gambler asks, should I do Facebook, Google, TikTok, SEO, or postcards? The house asks, where is the leak? That is the difference. Tactics are not bad. Ads are not bad. SEO is not bad. Social media is not bad. Agencies are not bad. But tactics without a system are just chips on a roulette table. And eventually, the house takes the money. The boosted post trap. Let's talk about the easiest way clinics gamble. The boosted post. Meta tells you the post is doing better than normal. You feel good. You click boost. You spend $50. Maybe you get likes. Maybe you get comments. Maybe someone messages the page. But what happens next? Who calls them? How fast? What do they say? What is the offer? Where do they book? What reminder sequence fires? What happens if they do not answer? What happens if they book and no show? What happens if they come in and say, I need to think about it? Most clinics do not know. So the boosted post is not a campaign. It is a scratch-off ticket. And scratch-off tickets are not business strategy. The cheap special trap. Then there is the cheap special. $21 exam, $27 consultation, free adjustment, discounted first visit. These can create attention, but attention is not the same as demand. A cheap offer often attracts people who want the deal, not the transformation. Then the clinic says, these leads are terrible. But what did the clinic advertise? A cheap thing. So the market responded with cheap behavior. That is not shocking. If you train people to buy based on price, do not be surprised when they act price sensitive. A discount exam is a tax on bad positioning. Every time you discount to get someone in the door, you are paying a penalty for not knowing how to explain your value clearly enough that the full price feels worth it. The discount is not a strategy, it is the cost of the strategy you do not have yet. A clinic that cannot explain value will eventually be forced to discount. A clinic that can explain value does not need to. The agency trap. Some agencies are good, many are not. But even a good agency cannot fix a clinic that has no conversion system. An agency can create traffic. Maybe they can create leads. Maybe they can create bookings. But they cannot magically make your front desk fast, your consult clear, your patients show up, your offer valuable, or your care plan feel obvious. That part is inside the clinic. This is why so many clinic owners bounce from agency to agency. The first agency does not work, so they hire another, then another, then another, but the same leak remains, different traffic, same broken bucket. The operator question. Smart operators do not ask, what marketing should I try next? They ask, where is the constraint? If the phone rings but nobody answers, the constraint is follow-up. If people book but do not show, the constraint is show rate. If people show but do not buy, the constraint is the offer or close. If people buy once but never continue, the constraint is delivery or ascension. If nobody clicks, the constraint is traffic or message. Every clinic has a constraint. Marketing roulette happens when you ignore the constraint and keep buying more tactics. That is how clinics waste money, not because marketing is bad, but because the wrong problem is being solved. The roulette audit. Now let's measure it. Look at your last 6 months of marketing. Write down every tactic you tried: boosted posts, Facebook ads, Google ads, SEO, postcards, email campaigns, reactivation texts, discount offers, referral campaigns, agency campaigns, social media content, health fairs, spinal screenings. Now ask, how many different tactics did you try? If the list is long, but nothing stayed long enough to improve, you were probably spinning the wheel. How many leads came from each tactic? Not vibes, not it felt like it worked. Actual lead count. How many leads became booked appointments? This tells you if attention turned into action. How many booked appointments showed up? This tells you if your reminder and commitment process works. How many shows became paying patients? This tells you if your consult and offer work. How many paying patients accepted a longer term plan? This tells you if the clinic has real patient value or just one-time transactions. How much cash was collected from each tactic? Not likes, not impressions, not reach. Cash collected, because likes do not pay rent. Score yourself. Give yourself 1 point for every yes. I know how much I spent on marketing in the last 6 months. I know how many leads each tactic produced. I know how many leads booked. I know how many bookings showed. I know how many shows paid. I know how many paid patients continued into a plan. I know how much cash each tactic collected. 0 to 2 points. You are playing marketing roulette. 3 to 5 points. You have some tracking, but the machine is still foggy. 6 to 7 points. You are starting to think like the house. Most clinics do not need more marketing ideas. They need a patient flow system, because before you spend another dollar on traffic, you need to know what happens after attention shows up. The rule. Here's the rule. If you cannot track the path from attention to cash, you are not marketing. You are gambling. That is marketing roulette. And it is why so many clinics think they have a lead problem when they actually have a leak problem. Which brings us to the real diagnostic framework, the 4 leaks. Before we dive into the 4 leaks, I want to give you something. Not as a pitch, just because I know what happens next. You are about to look at your clinic differently. You are going to start asking, is my problem traffic? Is my problem follow-up? Is my problem show rate? Is my problem the consult? Is my problem retention? And if you have never looked at your clinic this way before, it can feel overwhelming. So I made a free gift for you. It is called the Revenue Leak Audit. In this audit, we help you look at your clinic's patient flow and find where the biggest leak is hiding. It might be that not enough people hear about you. It might be that leads are coming in, but nobody follows up fast enough. It might be that people book and do not show. It might be that they show up but do not say yes. It might be that they start care but never continue into a real plan. The point is simple. Do not guess. Find the leak. That is the whole reason I made this free. Because guessing is how clinic owners waste money. They guess and buy more ads. Guess and hire another agency. Guess and blame the leads. Guess and discount harder. But operators do not guess. Operators diagnose. So if you want help finding the biggest leak in your clinic, apply here. free gift. Book your free revenue leak, scan or tap. I will walk you through your revenue leak audit at no cost. We find the biggest leak in your clinic together. No pitch, no pressure, just a clear diagnosis. You will leave with more clarity than you came in with. No pressure, no weird pitch, just a clear look at what is leaking and what to fix first. Now, whether you book the audit or not, you still need to understand the framework. So let's talk about the 4 leaks. Section 2, the diagnosis. Chapter 5, the 4 leaks. I just need more leads. That is what almost every clinic owner says first. The schedule has gaps, the front desk feels slow, revenue is inconsistent, so the answer feels obvious: we need more leads. But that is not always true. In fact, more leads can make the problem worse. Because if your clinic is leaking money after the lead comes in, adding more leads does not fix the leak. It just gives the leak more water. The expensive mess. Here is the pattern. A clinic spends $5,000 on ads. The campaign generates 100 leads. At first, everyone gets excited. The phone starts ringing, forms come in, messages hit the inbox. The clinic thinks, finally, the marketing is working. But then reality shows up. Out of 100 leads, only 40 get contacted. Out of 40 contacted, only 20 book. Out of 20 booked, only 10 show. Out of 10 who show, only 2 start care. Then the owner looks at the bank account and says, the ads did not work. But that is not the right diagnosis. The ads may have worked. The clinic leaked. The problem was not only traffic, the problem was what happened after traffic. That clinic did not have a lead problem. It had a revenue leak. And by pouring more leads into a broken system, the owner did not just stay stuck. They paid to expose the mess. Leads expose leaks. Here's the rule. Traffic does not fix a leaking clinic. It exposes the leak. If your follow-up is slow, more leads create more missed opportunities. If your reminder process is weak, more bookings create more no-shows. If your consult is unclear, more shows create more I need to think about it. If your offer is weak, more attention creates more price shoppers. If your patient journey is not engineered, more new patients create more people who start once and disappear. More leads are not bad, more ads are not bad, more attention is not bad, but traffic must enter a system. Otherwise, you are just pouring water into a bucket with holes in the bottom. Smart operators do not turn on the faucet first. They find the holes. Then they turn on the water. The 4 leaks. There are 4 main places money disappears from a clinic. I call them the 4 leaks. Traffic. The attention leak. This is the obvious one. Not enough of the right people know you exist. Your clinic may be good, your care may be great, your patients may love you, but if the right people do not hear about you, none of that matters. The market does not reward the best doctor. It rewards the doctor people know, trust, and act on. Traffic is the first leak, but it is not the only leak. And that is where most clinics get trapped. They think every problem is traffic. It is not. Shows. The commitment leak. This is where people raise their hand, but never walk through the door. They submit a form, message the clinic, book an appointment, say they are interested, then they disappear. Most clinics call this bad luck. It is not. Show rate is engineered. Confirmation matters. Speed matters. Reminders matter. Expectation setting matters. The first phone call matters. The first text matters. The patient's belief before they arrive matters. If people book but do not show, you do not need more leads first. You need to fix the commitment leak, closes, the value leak. This is where patients show up but do not say yes. They come in, talk to the doctor, hear the recommendation, then say, I need to think about it. Let me talk to my spouse. I need to check my insurance. That is more than I expected. Sometimes those are real objections, but often they are symptoms. Symptoms of a value leak. The patient does not understand the problem clearly enough. They do not understand the cost of waiting. They do not understand the path. They do not believe the recommendation is worth the investment, so they delay. If people show but do not start care, the issue may not be traffic. It may be the way value is being built before the recommendation. Plans. The retention leak. This is the leak most clinics ignore. A patient starts care, pays once, attends a few visits, then disappears, or they finish the first step but never continue into a real plan, or they get some relief and drift away before the clinic can create long-term value. This is expensive. Because the most profitable patient is not always the first visit, it is the patient who stays, follows the plan, gets a better experience, refers, reviews, and returns. If patients start but do not continue, you do not just have a retention problem, you have a lifetime value problem. And lifetime value determines how much you can afford to spend to acquire a patient. That is why this leak matters. The leaky bucket. Imagine your clinic is a bucket. Traffic is the water. Every lead, call, message, appointment, and patient is water entering the bucket. But the bucket has 4 possible holes: the attention leak, the commitment leak, the value leak, and the retention leak. Most clinic owners only stare at the faucet. They say, turn it up, more ads, more posts, more referrals, more campaigns. But if the holes are big enough, turning up the faucet just makes the mess louder. The operator does something different. The operator checks the bucket, the 4-lever check. Pull the last 30 days. Do not overcomplicate it. Just answer these. Traffic. How many new leads or new patient inquiries did you get? Shows. Of the people who booked, how many actually showed up? Closes. Of the people who showed, how many started care or paid for the next step? Plans. Of the people who started, how many continued into a full plan, completed the plan, reviewed, referred, or stayed active? You are not looking for perfection, you are looking for the biggest leak, because the biggest leak tells you what to fix first. Example. Let's say you got 100 leads, 40 contacted, 20 booked, 10 showed, 2 started care, 1 continued into a plan. Most owners look at that and say, I need better ads. Maybe. But the numbers say something more useful. You lost 60 people before contact, you lost 20 more before booking, you lost 10 before showing, you lost 8 before starting, you lost 1 before continuing. Now you have a map. You can stop guessing. The rule. Here's the rule. Fix the biggest leak first. If traffic is low, fix attention. If bookings are low, fix follow-up. If shows are low, fix commitment. If closes are low, fix value. If plans are low, fix delivery and ascension. Do not fix everything. Do not chase every idea. Do not buy another tactic because you feel nervous. Find the leak, fix the leak, then add more water. That is how operators think. The shift. This is the shift from gambler to house. The gambler asks, how do I get more leads? The house asks, where does the patient flow break? The gambler asks, what marketing should I try next? The house asks, which leak is costing me the most money? The gambler buys tactics, the house builds systems, and once you understand the 4 leaks, you can never unsee them. Every clinic problem starts to look different. Slow month? Find the leak. Bad ads? Find the leak. No shows? Find the leak. Weak close rate? Find the leak. Patients not staying? Find the leak, because there is always a leak. The question is whether you are willing to look at the numbers honestly. In the next chapter, we are going to start with the first leak, traffic, the attention leak. Chapter 6. Traffic. The attention leak. The market cannot buy what it does not know exists. You can be a great chiropractor, you can care deeply, you can have the cleanest clinic, the best equipment, the nicest staff, and the strongest clinical skill in town. But if the right people in your local market do not know you exist, none of that matters. The best kept secret in town is still a secret, and secrets do not fill schedules. That is the attention leak, the invisible clinic. A lot of clinics are not bad, they are invisible. The doctor is good, the care is good, the patients who come in usually like the place, but not enough people know, so the clinic waits for referrals, for insurance directories, for someone to search chiropractor near me, for an old patient to remember them, for a Facebook post to magically take off, and then the owner wonders why growth feels slow. The problem is not always the clinic. The problem is that the market has not been forced to pay attention. If your ideal patient does not see you, hear you, trust you, or understand why they should act now, you do not have demand. You have potential, and potential does not pay rent. Traffic is a faucet. Traffic is the first lever. Without attention, nothing else happens. No attention means no leads means no bookings means no shows means no sales means no care plans. So yes, traffic matters. But here is where most clinic owners get it wrong. Traffic is not a strategy, it is a multiplier. It multiplies whatever your system already does, good or bad. If the system is strong, more traffic accelerates growth. If the system is broken, more traffic accelerates the loss. So traffic is not everything, but traffic is first. The question is not, do I need attention? Of course you do. The question is, what kind of attention creates trust before the price conversation starts? That is the part most clinics miss. The good doctor delusion. Here is something most chiropractors do not want to hear. Being a great clinician can actively hurt your business. Not because skill does not matter, it does. But clinical excellence and business visibility are completely separate games. The market does not have access to your clinical skill. They cannot feel how good your adjustments are. They cannot measure your diagnostic depth or your treatment outcomes. What they can measure is how often they see you, how clearly you explain what you do, and how many people they trust have recommended you. That is all they have. And if you believe that being a great doctor is enough to build a great practice, you have made the most expensive assumption in this industry. The market does not choose the best doctor, it chooses the most familiar one. That is uncomfortable, but it is true. And once you accept it, you stop waiting for your skill to speak for itself, and you start building the system that speaks for you. Why chiropractic traffic is different. A restaurant can run an ad showing a burger. Someone sees it, gets hungry, and buys. Simple. A chiropractor has a different problem. Your prospect is not just buying a burger, they are trusting you with their body. They may be skeptical, they may have tried things before, they may be worried about cost, they may not understand what is causing their pain, they may not know if chiropractic care is right for them, they may not even know why they should act now. So, if your ad only says, book a consultation, or new patient special, or come see us, you are asking for commitment before creating belief. That is why so many clinics attract price shoppers. The market does not understand the value yet. So they ask about price. They ask about insurance. They compare you to every other clinic. They disappear, not because they are bad leads, because you entered the conversation too late. The attention problem is really a belief problem. Most clinic owners think attention means more people need to see my clinic. That is only half true. The better version is more of the right people need to understand why my clinic matters. That is different. Attention alone creates awareness. Education creates belief, and belief is what makes someone take the next step. This is why random ads struggle. This is why cheap offers attract cheap behavior. This is why boosted posts rarely build a business. This is why get more leads is not enough. Because what you really need is not just attention, you need educated attention. People need to know what problem they actually have, why it matters, why waiting costs them, why your approach makes sense, why the next step feels safe, and why they should trust you before they ever walk in. That is the difference between traffic and patient flow. The core four. There are only four basic ways to get people to know you exist. I call them the core four. Warm outreach, contacting people who already know you, like past patients, old leads, local contacts, or referral partners. Cold outreach, reaching people who do not know you yet but may have the problem you solve. Content, publishing useful information that builds trust and authority over time. Paid ads, paying to put your message in front of the right people on purpose. None of these are magic. All of them can work. All of them can fail. The difference is not the channel, the difference is the system behind the channel. A clinic with no message, no offer, no follow up, and no conversion path can ruin any traffic source. A clinic with the clear patient flow system can make traffic useful. That is the game. The problem with more traffic. Most clinic owners say they want more traffic, but what they really want is more patients. And those are not the same thing. Traffic is people noticing you. Patients are people trusting you enough to act. The gap between those two is where money disappears. That gap is why your traffic needs a job. The job of traffic is not just to get clicks. The job of traffic is to create enough trust for the right person to take the next step. For chiropractic clinics, the best next step is usually not buy a big care plan from a stranger. That is too much too soon. The better first step is come learn what is going on, understand the problem, and see if this makes sense for you. That is why education first marketing is so powerful. You are not begging people to buy. You are inviting them to understand, and once they understand, the sale becomes easier. The operator shift. The gambler asks, how do I get more leads? The operator asks, what belief needs to be created before someone becomes a patient? The gambler asks, which platform should I advertise on? The operator asks, what message makes my local market stop, care, and act? The gambler asks, how cheap can I get leads? The operator asks, how many of the right people can I educate, follow up with, and convert? That is the shift. Cheap attention is not the goal. Profitable patient flow is the goal. The rule of 100. If you have an attention leak, you need volume. Not once, not when you feel like it. Daily. You need to pick a traffic lever and work it hard enough to get signal, something like 100 warm outreach attempts, 100 cold outreach attempts, 100 minutes creating useful content, or $100 in paid ads, or some version of volume that your clinic can actually sustain. The exact number matters less than the principle. No volume, no signal. No signal, no system. Most clinics do not have a bad market. They have low activity, they do too little for too short a time, get no result, and decide the channel does not work. That is not testing. That is dabbling. And dabbling is just another form of gambling. The attention audit. Now look at your clinic. Ask yourself, how many new people heard about your clinic in the last 30 days? Not existing patients, new people. How many of those people took an action? Called, clicked, booked, messaged, registered, walked in? What message did they see before they acted? Was it a discount, a generic post, a random ad, a real educational reason to trust you? Do you have one repeatable way to create attention every month? If the answer is no, you have an attention leak. Does your traffic create trust before it asks for commitment? If your traffic only says, book now, you are making the market do too much work. You are asking them to trust you before you have educated them. The bigger lesson. Traffic is not just about getting seen, it is about getting seen in a way that makes the next step obvious. That is why the next chapters matter. Because even if you fix attention, you can still lose money, people can see you and not book, book and not show, show and not buy once and not continue. Traffic is the first leak, but it is not the whole machine. The goal is not to become famous. The goal is to create patient flow. And patient flow starts when the right people hear the right message, often enough to take the right next step. In the next chapter, we are going to talk about what happens after someone raises their hand. Because getting attention is one thing, getting them to actually show up is another. That is the commitment leak. Chapter 7. Shows. The commitment leak. I used to think no shows meant bad leads. That was the easy explanation. Someone fills out a form, books a time, says they are interested, then they do not show up. So you blame the lead. You say, they were not serious. They were flaky. Facebook leads are low quality. People do not respect appointments anymore. And sometimes, yes, people are flaky. But the more I studied this, the more I realized something uncomfortable. A lot of no shows are not lead problems, they are commitment problems. The person was interested, they just were not committed enough to protect the appointment. And that is a different problem. Because if it is a lead problem, you need better leads. But if it is a commitment problem, you need a better commitment process. That is the point of this chapter. Not to shame your front desk, not to blame your patients, not to pretend every no show is preventable, but to show you that show rate is not luck. Show rate is engineered. We had 40 appointments booked last month, but only 15 people walked in. This is the sound of a commitment leak. Most clinic owners treat a no-show like a weather event, something they cannot control. They blame the patient, the traffic, the quality of leads. But once you understand the game, you start seeing it differently. A booked appointment is not a patient yet. It is only a promise. And promises need protection. That is where most clinics leak money. They do the hard work to create the lead. They get the person to raise their hand. They book the appointment. Then they assume the patient will show up because the calendar says so. Bad assumption. A calendar event is not commitment. A confirmation text is not commitment. An automated reminder is not commitment. Commitment is built when the patient feels three things. This matters. This is easy. Someone is expecting me. If those three things are missing, the appointment is fragile, and fragile appointments break. Meet Mike. Before I show you the show rate system, I want you to meet Mike. Mike is not a bad lead. Mike is not flaky. Mike is not sitting at home thinking, how can I waste this clinic's time today? Mike is a normal person. He filled out your form at 11:47 p.m., standing in the cold at the edge of a youth soccer field because sitting in a folding chair for 90 minutes hurt too much. He stood the whole game. Every other parent sat. His daughter scored twice, and he cheered from the sideline with his hands in his pockets, not telling anyone why he was standing. He came home, saw your ad while scrolling, and filled it out before he could talk himself out of it. He booked the appointment, and in that moment he meant it. But then life happened. His kid needed something. Work got busy. His pain felt a little better. He started wondering what it would cost. He forgot what time he booked. He got nervous. He thought, I'll go later. And just like that, Mike disappeared. Most clinics call that a no-show. Operators call it a failed commitment process because Mike did not need more information. He needed the appointment to feel real. He needed to feel expected. He needed the next step to feel easy. That is where the free gift comes in. I call it the parking lot promise. The parking lot promise is simple. After someone books, Sarah sends them a message that makes the appointment specific, personal, and easy to visualize. Not this. Your appointment is confirmed for Tuesday at 3:30. That is weak. That sounds automated. That sounds easy to ignore. Instead, Sarah sends this. Mike, you're all set for Tuesday at 3:30. When you arrive, park in the front lot, walk through the glass door, and ask for me, Sarah. I'll be expecting you. That is different. Now Mike can see it. He knows where to park. He knows what door to walk through. He knows who to ask for. And most importantly, someone is expecting him. That creates a small social contract, and small contracts create big differences. The fortune is in the nurture. Leads are not an asset until they walk through your door. In the gap between I'm interested and I'm here, your profit disappears. If you are not good at getting people to show up, you are just paying to create interest that dies before it turns into care. That is expensive. The goal is not more appointments. The goal is throughput. Throughput means the percentage of people who move from one step to the next, lead to booked, to showed, to paid, to planned. The show leak is the gap between booked and showed, and if that gap is wide, more leads will not save you. They will just create more no-shows. The 4 show-up levers. To plug the commitment leak, you need 4 levers. Speed. The faster you contact someone after they raise their hand, the higher their intent still is. Wait too long, and their motivation cools. The lead gets distracted, overthinks it, compares options, forgets why they filled out the form. Speed protects intent. Availability. If people cannot find a time that actually works for them, they will book a maybe time. Maybe times create no-shows. You want real commitment, not calendar decoration. Specificity. The more specific the appointment feels, the more real it becomes. Where do they park? Who do they ask for? What should they expect? How long will it take? What should they bring? Fog kills commitment. Specificity protects it. Cadence. One reminder is not a system. People are busy. People forget. People get nervous. People need reassurance. So your follow-up needs a cadence. Confirmation, reminder, personal touch, same-day reminder, rescue if they miss. Not spam, not begging, just professional persistence. Calculate your show gap. Look at the last 30 days. Ask, how many people booked? How many actually showed? Now calculate. Show rate equals shows divided by booked appointments. If 40 people booked and 15 showed, 15 divided by 40 equals 37.5%. That means 62.5% of booked opportunities disappeared before the clinic ever had a real chance. That is not just frustrating, that is expensive. Because every no-show costs you the lead cost, the staff time, the calendar slot, the chance to help them, the chance to convert them, and the chance to create a long-term patient. So the question is not, why are people so flaky? The question is, where did our commitment process fail? That is how operators think. A booked appointment is not a patient. It is a promise that must be protected. And here is what nobody says out loud. Mike was not going to show up because your clinic was good. He was not going to show up because of your Google reviews or your equipment or your technique. He was going to show up, or not, based on whether the appointment felt real to him before he ever walked through the door. That is a completely different game than most clinic owners are playing. It does not come from your clinical skill, it comes from a process. And once you have the process, the no-show rate drops. Without it, you keep blaming the leads. The leads were never the problem. Next, we need to talk about what happens after they actually walk in. Because if they show up but do not say yes, you have the next leak, the value leak. Chapter 8 Closes, the value leak. I'll think about it. That sentence has killed more clinic revenue than bad ads ever will. You just spent 45 minutes with a new patient. You listened, you examined, you explained what you saw, you gave your recommendation, you showed them the care plan, and right when the patient should say yes, they say, I need to think about it. Or, let me talk to my spouse. Or, I need to check my insurance. Or, that is more than I expected. So they leave. And you already know what happens next. They do not call back. Most doctors think this is a sales problem. They think they need a better closing line, a better objection handler, a smoother way to talk about money, a way to overcome the patient. But that is not the real problem. The real problem is this: the patient did not see enough value before they saw the price. That is the value leak. A personal note. I want to be careful here. I do not believe most chiropractors are bad at caring. I do not believe most doctors wake up trying to sell people something they do not need. Most of them genuinely want to help. That is actually part of the problem. Because when you care about helping people, selling can feel weird. You think if they need it, they should understand. But they do not. Not because they are stupid, because they are not living inside your head. They do not see what you see. They do not understand the problem the way you understand it. They do not know what happens if they wait. They do not know why your plan is different. They do not know why the price makes sense. So when you give them the recommendation, they are not comparing this plan versus my future health. They are comparing this price versus my bank account. And once they are doing that, you are already in trouble. Meet Dr. Mark. Let's make this real. Meet Dr. Mark. Dr. Mark has been in practice for 11 years. He still handwrites a short thank you card to every new patient, has done it since day one. He took 3 CE courses last year. His adjusting table is the same one he bought when he opened because he is the kind of person who takes care of things. He adjusts 30 patients a day, goes home exhausted, and genuinely loves what he does. Patients like him. He knows his craft. He can explain the spine, posture, movement, compensation patterns, and all the technical stuff better than almost anyone in town. But his close rate has not changed in 4 years, and he does not understand why. People come in, they listen, they nod, they say, that makes sense. Then he presents the care plan, and suddenly the energy changes. The patient gets quiet. They look at the paper. They ask about insurance. They ask if they can do fewer visits. They ask if they can start later. They say they need to think about it. Dr. Mark thinks people just do not value their health. But that is not the full truth. The problem is that Dr. Mark is explaining like a doctor, and the patient is deciding like a human. Dr. Mark talks about structure. The patient cares about sleeping through the night. Dr. Mark talks about alignment. The patient cares about picking up their kid. Dr. Mark talks about spinal hygiene. The patient cares about getting through work without pain. Dr. Mark talks about the plan. The patient is thinking, is this worth the money? That is the gap. The patient did not say no because the care was bad. They said no because the value was not obvious enough. In the absence of value, price is the only thing that matters. Read that again. In the absence of value, price is the only thing that matters. If the patient does not clearly understand the value of the care plan, then the price becomes the only thing they can judge. And that is when you get, that is expensive. I need to think about it. Let me check my insurance. Can I do fewer visits? Can I just come when it hurts? Those are not always money objections. A lot of the time, they are value objections wearing a money costume. The patient is not saying, I cannot afford this. They are saying, I do not understand why this is worth it yet. That is a different problem, and it requires a different solution. Why normal consults break. Here is where most clinics make the mistake. They try to build all the value in one room. The patient walks in cold. They barely know you. They are skeptical, worried about cost, may have tried other things before, do not fully understand the problem, do not understand your process, may not even believe chiropractic care can help them. Then you have one consult to do everything. Build trust, educate them, diagnose, explain the problem, create urgency, show the plan, handle objections, talk about money, and get the decision. That is a lot to ask from one appointment, and that is why so many doctors feel like they are selling. They are trying to compress belief into a few minutes. The better way is not to sell harder. The better way is to build belief earlier. Build belief before the room. A strong clinic does not wait until the consult to create value. It creates value before the consult. Before the patient ever sees the price, they should already understand what problem they likely have, why it matters, why waiting can cost them, why your approach is different, why the next step is logical, why care is not just an expense, and why doing nothing has a cost too. This is one of the reasons we built Spine Empire, a patient acquisition and conversion system for chiropractic clinics. Not just ads, not just scripts, not just a course with videos, a system. It shows clinics how to turn strangers into educated prospects into booked appointments into paid patients, and paid patients into long term care. The important part is this: we do not want doctors selling harder. We want the patient to understand earlier, because when the patient understands the problem, the cost of waiting, and the path forward, the close stops feeling like pressure. It becomes the next logical step. That is the shift. Not, how do I convince this patient to say yes? But, how do I help this patient understand the value so clearly that saying yes feels obvious? That is how you plug the value leak, the value equation. There are four parts that determine whether a patient feels something is worth it. I call this the value equation. Dream outcome. What does the patient actually want? They do not want adjustments. They do not want spinal hygiene. They do not want a 24-visit corrective care plan. They want to sleep. They want to move. They want to work without pain. They want to pick up their kids. They want to play with their grandkids. They want to stop feeling old. They want confidence in their body again. If you sell the process instead of the outcome, value drops. Perceived likelihood of achievement. How confident are they that this will work for them? Not for patients like them. For them. This is where proof matters. Stories matter. Clarity matters. Confidence matters. A clear plan matters. Specific explanations matter. If the patient thinks, this sounds good, but I am not sure it will work for me, value drops. Time delay. How long until they feel progress? People may buy the long term dream, but they stay motivated through short term wins. If the plan feels endless, vague, or slow, value drops. The patient needs to understand what they should expect first. What happens in week one? What happens after the first few visits? What signs of progress should they look for? What is the path? Fog lowers value. Clarity raises it. Effort and sacrifice. How hard does this feel? How many visits? How much money? How much time? How much inconvenience? How much lifestyle change? If the plan feels overwhelming, value drops. This does not mean you make the care weaker. It means you make the path feel doable. You show them the next step. You explain the schedule. You remove confusion. You make the commitment feel manageable. The goal. The goal is simple. Increase the dream outcome. Increase their belief that it will work. Decrease the time it takes to feel progress. Decrease the effort, confusion, and fear required to start. That is how value goes up. And when value goes up, price feels smaller. The wrong way. The wrong way sounds like this. Based on your exam, I recommend a care plan of 24 visits over 12 weeks. The total investment is X dollars. That might be clinically accurate, but to the patient, it can sound like, give me a lot of money and come here a lot. That is not value. That is logistics. The better way. The better way sounds like this. You told me the biggest thing you want is to get through the workday without that pain shooting down your back, and to be able to play with your kids without worrying about paying for it later. Based on what we found today, I believe the issue is not just the pain itself, but the pattern causing it to keep coming back. The plan I'm recommending is designed to help us address that pattern, track your progress, and give you a clear path instead of guessing visit to visit. Now, the care is connected to the patient's life. That is value. Then you can present the plan. Clipboard beats charisma. Here is another mistake. Doctors think the close depends on personality. It does not. You do not need to become slick, pushy, or someone you are not. You need a process. A good consult follows a path. It makes the patient feel heard. It uncovers the real pain. It connects the problem to their life. It explains the risk of doing nothing. It shows the plan. It makes the next step clear. That is why clipboard beats charisma. Inside the Spine Empire system, we teach clinics to use structure instead of improvisation, because random conversations create random outcomes. A structured consult helps the doctor guide the patient from confusion to clarity. And when the patient has clarity, the recommendation feels less like a sale and more like the obvious next step. That is what most clinics are missing, not more persuasion, more structure. The Value Leak Audit. Now look at your own clinic. Pull your last 30 new patient exams. Ask how many showed up, how many received the recommendation, how many accepted the full care plan, how many said, I need to think about it, how many asked about price or insurance before they understood the value, how many followed up and started later. Now calculate close rate equals care plan, starts divided by qualified. Recommendations. If 30 people received a recommendation and 9 accepted. 9 divided by 30 equals 30%. That means 70% of your qualified opportunities leaked after the patient was already in front of you. That is expensive, because these were not cold strangers anymore. They showed up, they listened, they had a problem, they were close, and they still did not move forward. That is the value leak. Score yourself. Give yourself 1 point for every yes. I know my close rate from the last 30 exams. I know the top 3 objections patients give. I know whether patients understand the value before price is presented. I use a structured consult process. I connect the care plan to the patient's dream outcome. I create belief before presenting price. I have a follow-up process for I need to think about it. 0 to 2 points. You are leaking value badly. 3 to 5 points. You have pieces, but the consult is inconsistent. 6 to 7 points. You are starting to sell like an operator. The rule. Here's the rule. If the patient sees the price before they feel the value, you lose. That is the value leak. The solution is not to become more aggressive. The solution is to create more value before the decision, educate earlier, diagnose clearly, connect the plan to the dream outcome, make the path feel obvious, structure the consult, follow up fast. Because if the patient does not say yes, they do not get helped. And if they do not get helped, the clinic does not grow. That is why closing is not dirty. Closing is the bridge between understanding and action. Getting the yes is not the end, it is the beginning. The next leak is the one most clinic owners never bother to measure, because it is hiding behind a schedule that looks full. Plans, the retention leak. Chapter 9. Plans, the retention leak. The most expensive patient is the one who only comes once. Most clinic owners are obsessed with new patients, new leads, new appointments, new exams, new faces in the waiting room. They treat the clinic like a revolving door. Spend money to get a stranger through the front door, see them once or twice, watch them disappear out the back, then do it again next month. More ads, more leads, more chasing, more stress. That is not growth. That is a treadmill. And the treadmill has a name, the retention leak. Here's the part nobody talks about. The busiest clinic owners are often the most trapped. The schedule looks full, the team looks active, the owner looks successful from the outside. But underneath it all, they are running at maximum capacity just to stay in place. They cannot take a week off, the whole thing slows down. They cannot raise prices, they are afraid of losing volume. They cannot say no to bad patients, they need the revenue. They are not building an asset, they are maintaining a machine that eats them alive. Busy is not the same as growing, and feeling in demand is not the same as being in control. The most dangerous place a clinic owner can be is busy without retention, because the busyness hides the problem until it does not. Why new patients are a drug. I understand why clinic owners chase new patients. New patients feel exciting. They make the schedule look alive. They give the team something to do. They make marketing feel like it is working. But new patients are only valuable if they turn into retained patients. Because if patients do not stay, you are not building a clinic. You are renting attention. And rent is due every month. The real money is not just in getting the patient. The real money is in helping them stay long enough to get value, complete the plan, refer, review, and return. That is where the clinic starts compounding. Meet Clinic A and Clinic B. Let's make this painfully simple. Imagine 2 clinics, same town, same ad spend, same cost per patient, same starting point. Both clinics can acquire a new patient for $50. Not a lead, a patient. Someone who walks in and pays. In month 1, both clinics acquire 30 new patients, spending 30 patients times $50 equals $1,500. At the end of month 1, both clinics look the same number of new patients, same acquisition cost, same marketing result. But then, retention shows up. Clinic A keeps patients. Clinic A has a patient journey. They set expectations, they follow up, they track progress, they create small wins, they make the next step clear. They help patients understand why continuing matters. So Clinic A keeps the 30 patients, then next month Clinic A buys 30 more. Now Clinic A has 30 retained patients plus 30 new patients equals 60 active patients. Marketing spend, 30 new patients times $50 equals $1,500. Clinic A spent the same amount again, but now the active patient base doubled. That is compounding. Clinic B loses patients. Clinic B does not have a patient journey. Patients come in, get an adjustment, maybe feel a little better, but nobody follows up well. Nobody reinforces the value. Nobody creates the next step clearly, so the first 30 patients disappear. Now Clinic B starts month 2 back at 0. If Clinic B wants 60 active patients in month 2, it has to buy all 60 again. So Clinic B spends 60 patients times $50 equals $3,000. Same goal, twice the marketing cost, same town, same traffic, same market. Different retention. Month 3 gets worse. Clinic A keeps its patients and buys 30 more. Month 3, 60 retained plus 30 new equals 90 active patients. Marketing spend, 30 times $50 equals $1,500. Clinic B loses patients again. To have 90 active patients, Clinic B has to buy 90. Month 3, 90 new patients times $50 equals $4,500. Now look at the difference. Clinic A spent, month 1, $1,500, month 2, $1,500, month 3, $1,500, total $4,500. Clinic B spent, month 1, $1,500, month 2, $3,000, month 3, $4,500, total $9,000. Same acquisition cost, same patient goal, but Clinic B spent double. Why? Because Clinic B has to keep rebuying the patients it already paid for. That is the retention leak. The treadmill math. Now imagine this for a full year. Clinic A keeps stacking. Clinic B keeps replacing. Clinic A's marketing creates an asset. Clinic B's marketing creates exhaustion. Clinic A buys patients once, then builds value. Clinic B buys patients again and again. That is why retention matters. Because when you keep patients, every marketing dollar has a longer life. When you lose patients, every marketing dollar dies young. Most clinic owners think the problem is, I need more new patients. Sometimes that is true, but often the real problem is, I keep losing the patients I already paid to acquire. That is a much more expensive problem. The lifetime value problem. The most profitable clinic is not always the clinic with the most leads, it is the clinic with the best patient journey, because the patient journey determines what happens after someone says yes. Do they understand the plan? Do they show up consistently? Do they feel progress? Do they know what success looks like? Do they get celebrated? Do they leave reviews? Do they refer? Do they continue into the next appropriate step, or do they disappear? That is the difference between a clinic that compounds and a clinic that starts over every month. The full patient journey. This is one of the reasons we built Spine Empire. Most marketing systems stop at the lead, some stop at the booked appointment, better ones stop at the first sale, but that is not enough, because a paid patient is not the finish line, it is the beginning of the relationship. Spine Empire is built around the full patient flow system, stranger to educated prospect to booked appointment to paid patient to care, plan to review to referral to long-term value. The point is not just to create traffic. The point is to create a patient journey where staying, continuing, and referring feel like the natural next step. That is how you stop buying the same growth over and over again. The fortune is in the finish. The best marketing you will ever do is the patient experience after they buy, because that experience determines whether the patient becomes a one-time transaction, a completed care plan, a review, a referral, a long-term patient, or a walking billboard. Most clinics focus all their energy before the sale. Ads, offers, landing pages, phones, consults. Then the patient says yes, and the clinic relaxes. Wrong move. The sale is not where the work ends, the sale is where the work starts. Because if the patient does not complete the journey, the clinic does not collect the full value of the relationship, and the patient may not get the full value of the care. Lose lose. The 4 retention milestones. To plug the retention leak, every patient journey needs 4 milestones. Activate. Get them a win fast. This does not always mean a clinical miracle in 48 hours. It means they need to feel, I made the right decision. That can happen through relief, clarity, a better explanation, a strong first visit, a check-in call, or simply because the team made them feel cared for. The first goal is not just treatment. The first goal is confidence. If the patient doubts the decision, early, retention drops. Prove track progress. Do not let improvement stay invisible. If pain decreases, track it. If movement improves, show it. If posture changes, document it. If they sleep better, name it. If they can pick up their kid again, celebrate it. Patients forget how bad things were. That is why proof matters. Proof reminds them, this is working. And when they believe it is working, they are more likely to stay committed. Refer a patient who feels progress and feels cared for is more likely to share. But again, do not rely on hope. Create the moment. This is where tactics like the Sarah tactic matter. You make it easy for happy patients to tell the truth. Reviews and referrals should not be random accidents. They should be engineered moments inside the patient journey. Ascend when the first plan or first phase is complete. There needs to be a clear next step, not a confusing ending, not call us if it hurts again. That is how patients disappear. Instead, the clinic should help the patient understand what has improved, what still needs work, what happens if they stop now, what the next phase looks like, why continued care may matter, and what option makes sense for them. Ascension is not about forcing people into more care. It is about making the next appropriate step clear. If the patient does not know what to do next, they usually do nothing, and doing nothing is where retention dies. The compounding bucket. Imagine 2 buckets. The first bucket has a giant hole at the bottom. You pour patients in, they leak out. So you pour more in, they leak out again. That is Clinic B. The second bucket has a system. Patients come in, they are onboarded, they are followed up with, they see progress, they understand the plan, they refer, they continue when appropriate. That is Clinic A. The water level rises. That is compounding. And compounding is the difference between a clinic that grows and a clinic that just stays busy. The retention audit. Now look at your clinic. Pull the last 50 patients who started care. Ask, how many completed the recommended plan? How many dropped off before finishing? When did they drop off? After visit 1, visit 3, halfway through, near the end? How many left a review? How many referred someone? How many continued into the next appropriate step? How many are still active today? Do not guess. Look. The point is not to feel bad. The point is to find the leak. Calculate the retention gap. Use this. Completion rate equals completed plans divided by patients who started plans. If 50 patients started and 25 completed, 25 divided by 50 equals 50%. That means half of your patients disappeared before completing the plan. That is not just a retention problem, that is a profit problem. That is a patient experience problem, that is a growth problem, because every patient who leaves early reduces the lifetime value of the clinic, and when lifetime value drops, your ability to spend money on growth drops with it. Why this controls your ads? This is the part most clinic owners miss. Retention determines how much you can afford to spend to acquire a patient. If Clinic A keeps patients, gets reviews, gets referrals, and turns patients into long-term value, Clinic A can spend more to acquire patients. If Clinic B loses patients after 1 or 2 visits, Clinic B has to acquire patients cheaply or the math breaks. This is why strong clinics can outspend weak clinics. They are not always better at ads. They are better at monetizing the patient after the ad. That is the game. The clinic with higher lifetime value can afford to buy more attention. The clinic with low lifetime value gets priced out. Score yourself. Give yourself 1 point for every yes. I know my plan completion rate. I know where patients usually drop off. I have a structured onboarding process. I create a fast confidence building win. I track and show patient progress. I ask for reviews/referrals at the right moment. I have a clear next step after the first plan. 0 to 2 points. You are leaking patients badly. 3 to 5 points. You have pieces, but the journey is inconsistent. 6 to 7 points. You are starting to retain like an operator. The rule. Here's the rule. If you have to rebuy the same growth every month, you do not have growth. You have churn. That is the retention leak. The solution is not just more new patients. The solution is a patient journey that makes staying, completing, reviewing, referring, and continuing feel obvious. Because the most expensive patient is not the one who costs the most to acquire. The most expensive patient is the one you paid to acquire, and then lost before the value was created. Once you understand the 4 leaks, you can finally see why random tactics keep failing, not because the tactics are bad, but because you are pouring them into the wrong end of the machine. The next chapter is about building the right machine. It starts with education before offer. Chapter 10. Education before offer. I used to think marketing was about getting attention. I was wrong. Attention is only the first step. If a stranger sees your clinic but does not understand why they should care, you do not have demand. You have noise. And most clinics are drowning in noise. They run ads, boost posts, offer discounts, ask people to book, but they skip the most important step: education. Not boring education, not a lecture, not a brochure. Education that makes the patient think, that is me. That explains what I'm feeling. I understand why this matters now. This clinic gets it. That is when attention turns into trust. And trust is what makes the offer work. The runway principle. Most clinics are trying to land a jumbo jet on a driveway. The jumbo jet is your high-ticket care plan. The driveway is the tiny amount of trust you have built before asking for the commitment. A patient sees one ad, books one appointment, hears one explanation, then gets asked to commit to a multi-thousand-dollar care plan. That is too much weight for too little runway. High-ticket care needs runway. The runway is education. A toy plane can take off in 20 feet. A 747 needs miles of asphalt. The bigger the ask, the longer the runway needs to be. That is the mistake most clinics make. They do not have a pricing problem, they have a runway problem. Why cold consults are hard? Cold consults are hard because the patient is not where you are. You have seen this problem hundreds or thousands of times. They have not. You understand the patterns. They feel the symptoms. You understand the long-term risk. They are thinking about today's pain. You understand the path. They are wondering what it costs. That is the gap. And if you try to cross that gap in one short consult, you make the sale much harder than it needs to be. This is why patients ask, how much is it? Do you take my insurance? Can I just do one visit? Can I think about it? Those questions are not always objections. Sometimes they are signs that the runway was too short. The patient does not understand the value yet, so the price becomes the only thing they can judge. Clinical Latin versus English pain. A lot of doctors explain like doctors. They talk about structure, alignment, spinal health, and the care plan, but the patient is not thinking that way. The patient is thinking, can I sleep tonight? Can I get through work? Can I pick up my kid? Can I stop worrying this will get worse? Can I trust this person? That is English pain. If you speak clinical Latin to someone thinking in English pain, you lose them. Not because you are wrong, because they cannot feel the value yet. Education translates your expertise into the patient's world. That is the whole point. The trust compression map. To stop selling too early, you need to move the patient through 4 realizations before you ask for the big commitment. Why they need it. They must understand the real problem, not just the symptom, not just my back hurts. They need to understand what may be causing the pattern, why it keeps coming back, and why ignoring it may create more problems. When the patient only understands the symptom, they shop for quick relief. When they understand the problem, they become open to a plan. Why now? They must understand the cost of delay, not fake urgency, not pressure, real urgency. What happens if they keep waiting? What does another month of the same problem cost them? What activities are they already avoiding? What is the emotional cost? What is the physical cost? What is the family cost? People do not move because something is important. They move because it becomes urgent. Why you? They must understand why your approach makes sense, not why you are the greatest doctor alive, not why every other clinic is wrong, why your process is clear, why your explanation makes sense, why your plan feels specific to them, why they can trust the next step. Authority does not come from sounding impressive. Authority comes from making the patient feel understood. What happens next? They must see the path. Confused people delay. Clear people move. If the next step feels vague, expensive, or overwhelming, they hesitate. If the next step feels clear, logical, and manageable, they are much more likely to act. That is what education does. It turns confusion into clarity, and clarity creates movement. The best clinics educate first. The best clinics do not sell care to strangers. They educate strangers until care becomes obvious. That does not mean you give away everything. It does not mean you lecture people for hours. It means you build enough belief before the offer so the offer does not feel random. The patient should not feel like, where did this price come from? They should feel like, based on what I now understand, this next step makes sense. That is when the close becomes easier. That is when the patient is not being pushed, they are being guided. This is why we built Spine Empire. Spine Empire is built around an education first patient flow system, not just ads, not just scripts, not just reminders, a full system. The goal is to help a clinic create the runway before the patient ever sees the price. That means the patient is not walking into the consult cold. They have already been exposed to the problem, they already understand why waiting matters, they already see the clinic as the guide, they already have a next step that feels safe. By the time they sit down, the conversation is different. They are not just asking, how much? They are asking, what do I do next? That is the difference between selling care and creating belief. The educational runway. Imagine two planes. The first is a toy plane labeled $50 adjustment. It can take off from a short driveway. Small ask, small runway. The second is a massive 747 labeled $3,000 care plan. It cannot take off from the same driveway. It needs a real runway. That runway is education and belief. Most clinics try to land the 747 on the driveway. Then they blame the patient when it crashes. But the patient was not the problem. The runway was. Most clinics are trying to land the 747 on a driveway. One ad, one phone call, one rushed consult, then a multi-thousand-dollar care plan, then they wonder why the patient said, I need to think about it. The patient was not being difficult. You just asked the 747 to take off without a runway. The bigger the ask, the longer the runway. And right now, for most clinics, that runway does not exist. In the next chapter, we are going to talk about the uncomfortable distribution lesson most clinic owners do not want to admit. Because education is powerful, but only if enough people actually see it. Chapter 11. The distribution lesson. Nobody wants to admit. Learn the business mechanics. Reject the morality. I am going to say something uncomfortable. Drug dealers understand distribution better than most clinic owners. That should bother you, not because they are good, not because what they sell is good, not because you should copy their morality, but because even bad markets understand something many good clinics ignore. The market cannot buy what it does not know exists. That is the lesson. Not the morality, the mechanics. And if people selling destruction understand distribution, sampling, and repeat demand better than clinics helping people live with less pain and more movement, that should make you angry. Because you have the better product, you have the better mission, you have the better reason to be known. But if nobody knows you exist, none of that matters. The best clinic in town can still lose to the clinic that understands distribution. The uncomfortable truth. Most clinic owners are too passive. They wait for referrals, for insurance directories, for people to search Google, for someone to remember them, for the next slow month to fix itself. Then they say, people just do not understand the value of chiropractic. Maybe. But whose job is it to make them understand? That is the game. If the market does not understand your value, you do not have a market problem. You have an education and distribution problem. The market is not obligated to find you. You are responsible for reaching the market. That is what operators understand. The three mechanics. To build a clinic you actually control, you need to stop being a spectator and start being an operator. There are three mechanics you must understand: distribution, sampling, and repeat demand. These are not drug concepts, they are business concepts. Used badly, they create harm. Used ethically, they help good businesses reach more people, create more trust, and deliver more value. The mechanics are identical. The product and the mission are not. Distribution. Drug dealers do not sit in a room and wait for customers to find them. They go where their market is. They show up on the same corner at the same time until they become a predictable presence in the environment. They do not do it once and hope people remember. They do it until they become unavoidable. That is distribution. And most clinic owners do the opposite. They build a website, post twice a month, run one ad campaign, and wonder why nobody comes. Distribution is not a one time action. Distribution is the repeated movement of your message into the market, reach, frequency, making sure the right people see you often enough that you become familiar before they ever need you. If I walked 3 blocks in any direction from your clinic and asked 10 people, do you know this clinic? How many would say yes? If the answer is zero, you are not the obvious clinic. You are invisible. And invisible clinics do not get chosen, they get discovered by accident. That is not a strategy, that is luck. Sampling. Here is the part of the drug dealer analogy that most people miss. The first one is free, not because they are generous, because they understand something critical about human behavior. The barrier to the first experience is the hardest barrier to cross. Once someone has the experience, the conversation changes. They are no longer deciding whether to try, they are deciding whether to come back. For a chiropractic clinic, sampling does not mean giving away free adjustments. It means giving value that lowers the barrier to the first real step, an educational workshop that helps someone understand why their back keeps hurting, a guide that explains what they are actually dealing with, a posture screen that makes the invisible visible, a conversation that gives clarity before asking for commitment. But here is what makes sampling powerful, and this is the part that connects directly to the casino. What you are sampling is not the service, it is the dream outcome. The drug dealer is not selling a substance, they are selling a feeling. You are not selling adjustments or care plans or spinal hygiene. You are selling sleep. You are selling the ability to pick up your kid without flinching. You are selling a workday that does not end with you lying on the floor. The sample has to give the patient a taste of that, not a taste of your process, but a taste of what their life looks like when the problem is handled. When sampling works, the patient does not feel like they got a free thing. They feel like they finally understand what has been happening to them. And once they understand that, they want the solution. Repeat, demand. The third mechanic is the one that separates a transaction from a business. Drug dealers engineer repeat demand through the product itself. The nature of what they sell creates a reason to come back. You do not have that, and you do not want it, but you still need to engineer the return. Repeat demand in an ethical clinic is built through results, not dependency. The patient comes back because they saw real progress and understand that stopping early means losing it. They come back because the clinic tracked their improvement and showed them the before and after. They come back because someone followed up. They come back because the next step was made clear before they had a chance to drift. They come back because the experience of being in your clinic felt like being guided, not sold. This is not manipulation. This is leadership. A patient who understands what they are working toward and why consistency matters will choose to come back. A patient who was never given that context will get some relief, feel okay for a week, and quietly disappear. Same result. Completely different patient journey. And the difference between those two patients is not the care, it is the communication before, during, and after the care. Most clinic owners think the goal is to get a new patient. Wrong. The goal is to create a patient journey. A new patient is the beginning. If the patient comes once and disappears, you have to buy another patient, then another, then another. That is the treadmill. Distribution, sampling, and repeat demand together are the answer to the treadmill. You reach the right people, you give them a taste of the outcome, and you build a system that makes continuing feel like the obvious choice. That is how the house operates. That is how you stop gambling on new patients every month and start compounding the ones you have. Referrals, the part nobody teaches. Here's the part of the drug dealer model that most people skip over. They do not have a marketing budget. They have no ads, no funnels, no agencies, no social media team, and yet they grow fast. How? The product delivers the dream outcome so completely that the people who experience it become distributors. They tell someone, not because they were asked, not because there was a referral program, not because someone handed them a card and said, mention us to a friend. They tell someone because the outcome was worth talking about, because the relief was real, because it changed something, because their friend asked why they seemed different. That is the referral mechanic, and it is completely dependent on one thing: whether the dream outcome was actually delivered. If the patient got the outcome, if they slept, if they moved, if they got through the workday, if they picked up their kid, they will talk, not all of them, but enough. And the ones who do not talk will at least come back. Either way, you win. This is where Hormozzi's value equation becomes the entire business model. Dream outcome, high. Perceived likelihood of achievement, high. Time delay, short. They need to feel something early, not just at the end of 24 visits. Effort and sacrifice, low. The patient should not feel like recovery is a second job. When all four of those are true, the product markets itself. Drug dealers understood this before most business schools ever did. The product has to be so good at delivering on the promise that users cannot help but become advocates. Your product, chiropractic care, can do exactly that. The question is, whether your patient journey is designed to make the outcome visible, fast, and undeniable. Because if the patient gets relief and does not realize your clinic is the reason, they will not refer. If the patient gets relief and it felt hard and confusing and expensive and bureaucratic, they will not refer. But if the patient gets relief, felt guided, felt cared for, felt seen, and it happened faster than they expected, they will tell someone. That is the fourth mechanic. And it is the one that makes the other three compound. The obvious clinic. The goal is not to be the loudest clinic. The goal is to become the obvious clinic. The obvious clinic is the one people already recognize. The obvious clinic is the one that taught them something useful. The obvious clinic is the one that showed up before they were desperate. The obvious clinic is the one that made the next step feel safe. The obvious clinic is the one their friend mentioned, their feed showed, their review confirmed, and their own experience reinforced. That is what distribution does when it is paired with education and follow-up. It creates familiarity. Familiarity creates trust. Trust creates action. Action creates patience. And patience create proof. Then proof feeds the whole machine again. That is how the house thinks. Distribution versus hope. Imagine two clinic owners. The first has a nice office, a clean front desk, a decent website, good clinical skill, a few happy patients. But his growth strategy is basically, I hope people find me. The second is distributing, educating the market, running events, following up, asking for honest reviews at the right moment, creating proof, making the next step obvious, building a system where more of the right people hear about the clinic every month. Which clinic wins? Not always the better clinician, the better operator. That is the uncomfortable truth. The market does not reward hidden excellence, it rewards visible value. The full distribution system. Most clinic owners do not need another random marketing idea. They need a distribution system, a way to get attention, turn attention into education, turn education into trust, turn trust into booked appointments, turn appointments into paid patients, turn paid patients into long-term care, reviews, and referrals. That is the full machine. Not one tactic, not one ad, not one script. The whole patient flow system. Because distribution by itself is not enough. If you distribute a weak message, you get ignored. If you distribute a cheap offer, you attract shoppers. If you distribute without follow-up, you waste attention. If you distribute without a next step, you create curiosity that goes nowhere. Spine Empire exists to make the whole path clear. The distribution map. Here's the simple map. Reach to trust to logic to action reach. Do enough of the right people see you? If not, you are invisible. Trust. Do they believe you understand their problem? If not, they ignore you or price shop you. Logic. Does the next step make sense? If not, they delay. Action. Is there a clear, easy step to take now? If not, they do nothing. Most clinics skip straight from reach to action. They run an ad and ask someone to book. But they never build trust. They never explain the logic. They never make the step feel safe. Then they blame the lead. Wrong diagnosis. The system was incomplete. The corner test. Here is the action. Walk 3 blocks in any direction from your clinic, or imagine doing it. Ask 10 people. Do you know this clinic? Do you know what they help with? Do you know why someone would choose them? Have you seen anything from them in the last 30 days? If the answer is no, you have a distribution problem. You are not failing because the town is bad. You are failing because the town does not know why you matter. And if they do not know why you matter, they cannot choose you. Somewhere in your city right now, someone is lying on their couch at 11 p.m. with a heating pad on their lower back, Googling whether their pain is serious. They are not looking for a chiropractor yet. They are looking for an answer. If they find your clinic in that moment, not a book now ad, but something that actually explains what is happening to them, you just became the obvious choice before they ever made an appointment. That is what distribution paired with education does. It shows up before the patient is ready, so that when they are ready, you are already there. The best clinic does not win if the market never sees it, but the clinic that shows up in the right moment with the right message before the competition even knows the prospect exists, that clinic wins almost every time. In the next chapter, we are going to talk about one of the most important parts of the machine, the small yes before the big yes. Chapter 12. The small yes before the big yes. Most people need a smaller first yes before they can give you a bigger yes. This is where a lot of clinics lose the game. They meet a stranger who barely knows them. The stranger may be skeptical, may be worried about money, may have tried other things before, may not even fully understand their own problem yet. Then the clinic asks for a big commitment. A multi-thousand-dollar care plan, multiple visits, time, money, trust, a change in schedule, a change in behavior. That is a big ask. And when the patient says, I need to think about it, the clinic thinks the patient was not serious. But sometimes the patient was serious. The gap was just too wide. You asked for the big yes before earning the small yes. The canyon problem. Imagine a patient standing on one side of a canyon. On their side is pain, confusion, skepticism, and fear. On the other side is the care plan, better movement, less pain, more confidence, a clear path. But between them is a giant gap. That gap is not just money, it is trust, belief, certainty, clarity, and perceived risk. Most clinics stand on the other side yelling, jump! Then they get frustrated when the patient does not jump. Operators build a bridge. That bridge is the small yes. Meet Anna. Anna is not against care. She is not cheap. She is not difficult. She is scared. She has had back pain for 8 months. She has a YouTube playlist on her phone called Back Stuff, 23 videos, none of them finished. She bought a heating pad from CVS last November and it has lived on her bed ever since. She tried the stretches. She tried the painkillers. She told herself she would book an appointment after the holidays. The holidays came and went. So did January. So did February. She kept waiting for a version of the pain bad enough to force the decision, but it never got bad enough in one dramatic moment. It just stayed, low and constant, the way bad things do when they are not quite urgent enough to act on. Now she is sitting in your clinic. She likes the doctor. She likes the team. But in her head, she is still asking, is this really going to work for me? That is the question. Not, is chiropractic good? Not, is this doctor smart? Not, is this office clean? The real question is, will this work for someone like me? That is where most clinics lose her, because they explain the plan. They explain the price, they explain the schedule, but they do not show enough proof that people like Anna have already walked the path. So Anna hesitates. She says, I need to think about it. And she leaves. Not because she hated the offer, because the bridge was not strong enough yet. Free gift, the wall of fame. This is one of the simple tools we teach inside Spine Empire. I call it the wall of fame. The wall of fame is not decoration. It is not just a cute office idea. It is a belief-building machine. Inside the clinic, you create a simple visible wall where patient wins are documented, not fake hype, not exaggerated claims, not miracle promises, real progress, real stories, real moments. Examples: slept through the night for the first time in months. Picked up my daughter without fear. Finished a full workday without that stabbing pain. Got back to walking every morning. Felt confident moving again. You can include simple progress notes, patient quotes, milestone cards, or photos only when you have proper permission. The point is simple. When Anna walks in and sees proof that people like her have made progress, the big yes becomes less scary. She is no longer crossing the canyon alone. She can see footprints. That matters. The Wall of Fame is used in the Spine Empire delivery system to turn patient progress into visible proof and help create raving fans, reviews, and referrals. Why the Wall of Fame works? Most patients do not need more clinical language. They need belief. They need to see, someone like me started where I am. Someone like me was unsure too. Someone like me took the first step. Someone like me got a win. That lowers risk. That builds trust. That creates momentum. And momentum makes the next yes easier. Because the small yes is not only the first payment. Sometimes the small yes is emotional. A small yes can be, maybe this is possible. Maybe this clinic understands me. Maybe I should take the next step. That is the bridge. The two-step sale. Let's make this simple. A patient sees an ad that says, start a full corrective care plan today. They do not know the clinic, the process, the doctor, the cost, or whether to trust the recommendation, so they keep scrolling. Now imagine a different first step. They see an invitation to learn why their back pain keeps returning, what most people misunderstand about the problem, and what the first step should be if they want to stop guessing. That feels safer. They attend. They learn. They understand. They start to trust the doctor. Then they see proof. They see the wall of fame. They see people like them. Then they are offered a low-risk first step. Not the entire mountain, just the next step. Now the big care plan is not coming from nowhere. It is connected to a path. That is the two-step sale. Not because you are tricking anyone, because humans move better in steps. The low-risk bridge. A small yes is a low-risk first step that helps the patient move from interest to trust. It is not a random discount, not a cheap gimmick, not come in for one free adjustment and maybe we can sell you later. A good small yes does three things. It reveals the problem, it gives value immediately, it makes the next step logical. The small yes should not replace the care plan. It should prepare the patient for it. It should help them think, oh, this is more serious than I thought. This clinic understands what is happening. There is a path here. The next step makes sense. That is when the big yes becomes easier. Why discounts fail? A lot of clinics already have a small yes, but it is the wrong kind. They run $21 exam, free consultation, discounted adjustment, new patient special. These can get attention. But attention is not the same as trust. A discount first offer often trains the market to judge you by price. So the patient comes in thinking, how cheap can I get this? Not, how do I solve this problem? That is dangerous. Because if the first thing you sell is cheapness, do not be shocked when the patient behaves like a shopper. The better small yes is not built around cheapness. It is built around clarity. The small yes should help the patient understand the problem, believe the path, and feel safe taking the next step. That is very different. The three small yes offers. There are three main ways to create a small yes. Reveal the problem. This is a diagnostic style offer. The goal is to help the person see what is actually happening: a posture screen, a movement assessment, a back pain workshop, a problem focused consultation, a local educational event. The point is not to give them everything. The point is to reveal the gap between where they are and where they want to be. When the problem becomes clear, the solution becomes more valuable. Give a taste of the process. This lets the patient experience how your clinic thinks. Not just what you do, how you explain, how you listen, how you guide, how you make the problem feel understandable. For a skeptical patient, this matters, because before they trust your plan, they need to trust your process. A good educational first step gives them a taste of that process. Start step 1 of the journey. This is where the small yes becomes a real bridge. Instead of asking the patient to commit to the full journey immediately, you give them a structured first phase, a clear starting point, a short focused commitment, something that helps them begin. This is powerful because it lowers friction without lowering the value. The patient is not saying, "Yes, I will trust you forever." They are saying, "Yes, I am willing to take the first step." That is easier. And once they take the first step, the next step can become obvious. How the path is built. Spine Empire is built to help clinics stop asking cold strangers for a big yes too early. Instead, the system creates a patient flow path: attention to education to trust, to small yes to care, plan to long-term value. That is the bridge. The clinic does not just run ads and hope people book. It creates education before the offer. It makes the next step safer. It helps the patient understand why the first commitment matters. It gives them proof through tools like the Wall of Fame. Then it gives the clinic a structure for turning that first commitment into a longer-term care conversation when appropriate. Random marketing asks, how do we get more people to book? A patient flow system asks, what is the next easiest yes that moves the right patient closer to care? That is a better question. Anna did not need a discount. She needed a bridge. She was sitting in your clinic with 8 months of pain and a YouTube playlist she never finished. She liked you. She trusted your team. She just could not make the leap from "this seems good" to "I am committing." That gap, the distance between interest and action, is not a character flaw. It is physics. You cannot ask someone to jump a canyon in one step. You build a bridge first. Every time a patient leaves with "I need to think about it," they are not rejecting the care. They are telling you the bridge was not there yet. They did not see enough proof. They did not understand the path. They did not know what the first step was. They needed one more footprint in front of them before they could take the next one. Build the bridge. More of the right patients will cross it than you think. Now we can put the whole game together, because the goal was never just more leads. The goal was to stop gambling. The goal was to become the house. Conclusion. Stop gambling. Become the house. Thank you for giving me your most valuable asset, your attention. I do not take that lightly. You could have been doing anything else, but you chose to spend your time looking under the hood of your clinic. That tells me something about you, the truth. Here is what I actually believe. The thing I wrote this whole book to say: you are a great doctor. That is not the problem. Nobody questions your ability to help people. Nobody questions your clinical knowledge or how much you care about your patients. You went to school for years. You got licensed. You put in the work. You genuinely help people. And none of that is the problem. The problem is that nobody, not your school, not your program, not the chiropractic board, nobody sat you down and taught you how to run a business. They taught you anatomy. They taught you adjusting technique. They taught you ethics. They sent you out into the world fully equipped to treat patients and completely unprepared to attract them, convert them, retain them, and build something that does not collapse when you stop showing up. That is not your failure, but it is your problem. And the difference between those two things matters. You are not losing because you are a bad doctor. You are losing because you were trained to be an excellent clinician and then handed a business you were never taught to run. Most doctors in your position do the same thing. They try harder at the clinical part because that is the only tool they were given. They get better at adjustments. They take more CE courses. They improve their technique. And the business keeps struggling anyway, not because they are not good enough, because they are solving the wrong problem. That is what this book is. It is the class they should have taught you in year 1, not instead of the clinical training, alongside it. Most clinic owners never look at the machine. They feel the stress, complain about slow months, blame referrals and insurance and bad leads and the economy, but they never stop long enough to ask, where is the machine actually leaking? You did. That matters more than you know. The game. You see now. You now know the 4 leaks. Traffic. Not enough of the right people know you exist. Shows, people raise their hand but do not walk through the door. Closes, patients show up but do not see enough value before they see the price. Plans, patients start care but do not stay, complete, review, refer, or continue. Once you see these leaks, you cannot unsee them. A slow month is no longer just a slow month. A bad ad is no longer just a bad ad. A no-show is no longer just a flaky patient. And "I'll think about it" is no longer just a money objection. A patient disappearing is no longer just how people are. Everything becomes diagnosable. And when something is diagnosable, it can be improved. That is the shift from gambler to operator, your final free gift. Before you go, I want to give you one more thing. In the back of this book, you'll find the 7-day fix first checklist. This is your simple next step plan, not a 90-day theory, not a giant marketing plan, not another thing to overwhelm you. 7 days, one purpose. Find your biggest leak and take the first action to fix it. The checklist will help you look at where your patients are coming from, how many people are booking, how many are showing, how many are saying yes, how many are staying, where your follow up is weak, and what to fix first before spending more money on ads. Use it, print it, write on it, bring it to your team, because reading this book does not change your clinic. Acting on it does. Download the free 7-day checklist. Scan or tap. Get the checklist as a free PDF. Print it. Write on it. Start today. Why Spine Empire exists. Spine Empire exists to help chiropractic clinics stop guessing. It is not just ads, it is not just scripts, it is not just reminders, it is not just another course you watch and forget. It is a patient flow system. The goal is to help you find the leak, build the faucet, engineer the show, increase perceived value, create a low risk first step, improve retention, turn patient experience into proof, and build a clinic that does not depend only on referrals, insurance, or random marketing ideas. The goal is not to make you a pushier salesperson. The goal is to help more of the right patients understand, trust, show up, say yes, stay, and refer. Because business is the vehicle, but helping people is the destination. When your clinic is leaking money, you are stressed. When growth is unpredictable, you are reactive. When everything depends on you, you are trapped. And when you are trapped, you cannot lead the clinic the way you should. A better business gives you more capacity. More capacity gives you more ability to serve. That is why this matters. Your next step. The checklist will help you start, but if you want help finding the leak faster, use the Revenue Leak Audit. Knowing the leaks is not enough. Now you need to find your leak, not the average clinic's leak, not the theoretical leak, your clinic's leak. Before you spend another dollar on ads, before you hire another agency, before you boost another post, before you blame the leads, before you discount harder, you need to know which lever is actually broken. That is why we created the Revenue Leak Audit. On the audit, we look at your patient flow and help you identify where the money is disappearing. Traffic, follow up, show rate, close rate, care plan conversion, retention, referrals, patient value, no guessing, no gambling, just mechanics. Your free gift book, your free revenue leak audit. Scan or tap. I will walk you through your revenue leak audit at no cost. We find the biggest leak in your clinic together. No pitch, no pressure, just a clear diagnosis. You will leave with more clarity than you came in with. And if Spine Empire is the right fit, we can talk about that. If it is not, you will still understand your clinic better than you did before. That is the gift. You are not a bad doctor. You are not broken. You are not doomed to chase referrals forever. You just need to stop gambling. You need to become the house. Let's build your empire. Alex, Spine Empire.